so sick. WCC is the click. We never fear government, so you know we won't quit. Mambo family, this is your brother, Team Africa Worldwide. Today I'm here to talk about a plan to get the reparations and self determination that we as Africans in America so rightfully deserve. People talk about how they are owed reparations, and people talk about do for self, and people talk about buying black. But in my opinion, the reason why uh, this has not been effective up until today is because of one simple reason. Africans in America are too spread out. We live in all 50 states. That's not strategic. It's not strategic at all. Um, 50% or more of us actually live in the southeastern states, and that's due to the fact that when the slave ships came here, they docked in Virginia and North Carolina. And then, as people were sold to plantations, then they spread throughout the South. Um, and a lot of people don't know that some of these states are new. Originally, you had 13 colonies, and all up and down the East Coast. Florida was not a part of the United States. Florida was a part of Spain, and even the 13 colonies originally were colonies. It wasn't the United States. It was part of the British Crown, and so North Carolina used to extend all the way through where Tennessee currently is, in Georgia. There was no Alabama and Mississippi. I believe all of that was Georgia. Okay, so um, like I said, we are in the southeastern part of the country, and some people call the DMV area the Mid Atlantic. I'll just call all of that the Southeast, the so called Mid Atlantic, and the area north of Florida. Okay, so I'm not a big statistics and numbers person because statistics and numbers can always be manipulated, and it's hard to keep data up to date. But I know a lot of people are really into numbers, so I just wanted to run a few numbers down to you so you really know what's going on. Okay, um, I'm going to call the states that are heavily populated by African people the Big Nine. And the Big Nine are Louisiana, 32% black; Mississippi, 37% black; Alabama, 26% black; Georgia, 31% black; South Carolina, 27% black; North Carolina, 22% black; Virginia, 19% black; Maryland, 29% black; and Delaware, 21% black. Okay, and we know that the District of Columbia, which is not a state but a territory, is over 50% black. Okay, and I will talk about the numbers of the other half of Africans in America. I'm just going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to run off the states that have at least 1 million Africans living there. You have 1.4 million in Michigan, 2.7 million in California, 3.3 million in Texas, 1.8 million in Illinois, 1.1 million in Tennessee, 1.8 million uh, in that's Illinois as well. I did that one twice. Sorry, people. 1.7 in Ohio, 1.4 million in Pennsylvania, 1 million in New Jersey, and 2.8 million in New York, the state of New York. And like I said, I didn't mention the states that have less than a million people. So if you round it all up, it's over 20 million people who do not live in the big nine states. Now I looked at these states. I did a really quick research, Google research. Some of the numbers come from the U.S. Census, which is dated, and some of the numbers come from Wikipedia, and some of the numbers come from state sites that I've come up with. Uh, but most of the states that I mentioned have 5 to 11 million people. So, can you imagine if each one of these nine states got an additional 2 million African people, how that would tip the scales as far as voting? I mean, we can never say that voting wouldn't matter at that point. Um, we could um, vote in black governors, or at least governors who have our best interests at heart. We could vote in black senators. Um, and of course, the House of Representatives would be filled with more black people. Not to mention, this is a very large group as far as a consumer market. African Americans, unfortunately, we spend twice as much um, as other people in the United States. The average black family that brings in $40,000 a year spends just as much money per year as a white family that brings in $100,000. And that number may have changed, but that's what I learned in business school, a little while ago, or a very long time ago. So uh, it's probably gotten worse. So with that said, can you imagine any of our um, needs or desires being overlooked by the politicians of these states if we had this population? And, I'm a realist. I know that everybody is not going to make the move. It's going to be harder for people if they have children, especially if they have untraditional families where the dad may be in one house and the mom might be in another house. But families do move, do make moves. But individuals, there's no excuse. If you're an individual and you basically are a family of one, you should be making that move. Um, one question that somebody asked me about this is what about employment? Um, I have two answers for that. One, entrepreneurs should take the lead. I mean, people who make their money by working from home via internet and have other uh, entrepreneur endeavors that may be outside the home, but they still can take that business and relocate. Of course, they should make the move first. They have no excuse. Um, and for everybody else, I would take the Booker T. Washington approach. There are trades. Trades are basically recession proof. Um, Everything has to be fixed. Whatever somebody purchases eventually is going to break down and needs to be fixed, or if or some a lot of times new things need to be built. That's how place grows. So in most trades, you can learn them within 9 months. And a lot of states have uh, programs that will pay for it, help you pay for it. and especially if you're, if you served in the armed forces, there's all types of options to pay for that. So I would say, if you don't have a trade, get one, and if you're already an entrepreneur, great. And then, people who are working their current jobs, whatever you do in your current state, you can do that in one of the big nine states. Um, so if especially if you don't have a job that is super lucrative, um, and you can pick up and you can relocate. Now, granted, some of these states are a little pricey, and uh, Maryland and Virginia, are rather pricey around the DC area. However, it's all about getting in where you fit in. Um, Go where your income potential would take you. And this is not something that I think we should take 5 or 10 years to do. This is something we can do within the next year. Um, 2020 is just getting started good. We're about to close out the not even closing out the first quarter. We still got yeah, we're closing out the first quarter, and so we're just going into the second quarter of the year. So I mean, by this time next year, we could have, out of this 20 million plus that's not living in the big nine states, it should be no problem to get um, 10 to 15 million of these people uh, to migrate to these big nine states. And if you notice, these states are all close to the nation's capital, which is Washington, D.C., of course. And so we could consider this the new March on Washington. Um, so that's the plan. If you are serious about self determination, if you are serious about reparations, this is definitely a way to get it done. Uh, African people in the United States are a colonized people. And one of the obstacles that we have to prove that we're colonized people is that most of the times when people think of colonization, they think of external rather than internal colonization. They think of um, a nation ruling over people who live in another nation located on another landmass. But there's also something called internal colonialization. And that's if you have a people who are being colonized by uh, the majority, but it makes it a lot easier to point out this situation when everybody lives together. So that's my plan. And I think we should all jump on board. This is something that we really don't have to organize. We don't need a petition for this, even though we have petitions planned uh, to charge the United States with colonialism. We don't need a petition to move to the Big Nine. Um, we don't need to raise any group money for this. Uh, Everybody can move as individuals and individual families and finance their own move. And this is a great opportunity for us to um, bring our resources together, a great opportunity for us to buy black, a great opportunity for us to lift one another up as far as community, as far as villages raising children. I see this as, a no lose scenario. So, I mean, if you were really about blackness, you really calling yourself conscious or woke or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, if you're a Pan African or whatever you want to label yourself, and you are tired of seeing videos with us constantly being disrespected, being beat up at retail shops, being shot in the back by cops, being unjustly fired from jobs, and the list goes on and on. This is definitely just one of many methods that we should use to go forward and truly become a nation and fight for our self determination. So, with that being said, I'm going to let you go, family. I will close in the Swahili words of Kwaherini Kwasasa, which means goodbye for now.